For the first time in human history, we are seeing the population's IQ decrease every generation, where it's only increased every single year up until now. Why did that happen? How did that happen? And more importantly, what can you do to make sure you're not part of the group that's declining every year? A couple Russian scientists think they've got the answer for how to separate anybody out of the declining group. You ever look at social media and just think, how could somebody be that dumb? Like, there's no way that this has been going on for this long, that we've made it this far as a human civilization and people think this way. Well, you're actually right. Up until now, people didn't think this way. We're actually decaying as a civilization, except now we've got the internet and social media to exacerbate the decline. The Flynn effect up until now has been a definite science, stating that as a species progresses over time, they should genetically become more intelligent. At least that's how they would continue to survive. That has been definite science up until what they're proving in the 1990s. From this research is that 730,000 applicants across these generations have seen noticeable decline in their IQs, 7 points per generation. That has to be external factors. There is no way that we were increasing year over year over year, and then one day the switch just flipped. There is no way that that is not from things in the food, water, our basic healthcare, everything we do as a society. It's like you're hearing everybody today talk about how they've got brain fog, or they can't think clearly, or they don't remember why they walked in the kitchen, or they don't know why they opened up Instagram. They just did it out of habit. We're literally numbing our brains every single day. According to a study posted in the Environmental Health Perspective, the main culprit to this is over 80,000 industrial unregulated chemicals that filter throughout our food, water, and everyday products that is actually altering the chemistry of our brains. I'm not claiming that anybody or any products are intentionally putting these things in there, but again, you'll hear me say this a lot on this page, it would be a pretty profitable accident for them to regulate all of the products that lose them money and unregulate all of the products that make their way of life cheaper and make us weaker and dumber as a society. But again, I don't know for sure, but I do think it would be a pretty profitable accident. So what can you do? Do you let these cognitive declines just run rampant? Do you stack yourself up with 100 coffees that you bought from Starbucks that are filled with even more of the plastics? Or do you take Adderall, their prescription medication that is going to have a complete life-altering effect on your brain's mechanisms? Well, a group of guys in Russia seem to think that they've figured out how to escape this reality. Enter Semax. It is a neurocognitive enhancement peptide. Not a regular gas station pill or some neuro gum with a couple B vitamins in it or whatever. It is one of the only mechanisms that acts as a synthetic analog of ACTH, which stands for, bear with me on this, adrenocorticotropic hormone. What a round of applause effect in there. This helps the brain stimulate BDNF, which stands for Brain-Derived Neurotrophic Factor, which in simple terms is a protein that acts as a master switch for your brain's neuroplasticity, otherwise your brain's ability to grow new pathways. This supports the survival of existing neurons and also fosters the environments for new ones to grow and have connections. The reason people get brain fog or cognitive decline is their existing neurons are dying off and they're not able to make new connections. So if you can re-stimulate the brain's ability to make new connections or rewire it, then you can preserve your brain's level of cognitive function and also possibly enhance it. At least that's what the guys who made Semax are claiming. Research on this peptide was published in the Journal of Molecular Genetics and Microbiology, and they found a few really interesting findings. Number one is that pretty conclusively it increased BDNF in the first 3 hours. Number two is the patients in the clinical trials didn't experience a buzz-like effect like you get from caffeine or nicotine, or even something like an Adderall where you have that almost tweaked out feeling. They didn't experience any of that, which at first a lot of people would make the assumption that, oh, it's not working. Because there's no drawback, then there couldn't be no good. It's how a lot of people view medicine or any sort of anecdotal treatment. Semax hasn't been designed to act as a stimulant. It's not like you're pouring more gas in the engine. It's building you a better engine. At least that's what they're aiming to do. Some of the other interesting findings on this peptide is that it has been shown to decrease oxidative stress specifically in the brain, which is a key element of overall brain health and function, helping the brain keep its detoxifying agents active like glutathione, which you guys know I'm a huge fan of, but also SOD, which is the enzyme that keeps the brain functioning. As well as it's being studied for being a massive protector of dopamine, unlike Adderall and Ritalin, which are known for dumping your dopamine all over the place. Now, I've taken Semax myself, and I'll tell you about my own personal experience here in a moment, but before I move forward, I do want to make sure that we're on the same page. They have no conclusive findings on this drug. It has not been able to be FDA approved in the United States and has not gone through the proper clinical trials. But the question I ask is why not? Why hasn't it gone through? trials? What is so dangerous about it that could be any worse than what we're currently giving people who have attention and focus and cognitive issues, which is Adderall, which is the closest legal drug we have to meth. It's not that far off. You're gonna hear me use this phrase a lot on this page, which is, it would be a really profitable accident for the pharmaceutical industry to create an environment where we have more trouble focusing, sell the solution to us not being able to focus, and then that solution to us not being able to focus creates several, if not dozens, of more problems in the body that are also going to have to be repaired by more of that same industry's products. I don't know. Are there better answers out there? That's really what my page is about, is trying to find what those are. I personally am not an advocate for Adderall. In fact, I think it's probably one of the worst things you can give someone. And a lot of people would argue the reason that people have these cognitive declines are primarily because of the food we're eating. Processed sugars as well as seed oils drastically clog up the brain and destroy its basic functions. Most people could probably eliminate most of the cognitive issues they're having just by fixing their diet and probably their hormones. But unfortunately, we are now so far past that point where we have consumed so many of these forever chemicals that are going to be in our system for the end of time that we now have to find supplementation and other ways to combat these forever chemicals from rotting our brains from the inside. Delightful. Onto my own experience with Semax, I do want to emphasize that I'm not a medical professional, and anything I say on this page is specifically designed for science and your entertainment, and nothing should be misconstrued with medical advice, nor do I promote any of the products that I talk about. But my findings on Semax is that within about the first couple days, I noticed a pretty sharp cognitive increase in terms of my brain's ability in memorization, in output, in overall work performance and focus. One of the things I did not notice on Semax that a lot of people talk about is the sharp increase in cortisol, or the stress hormone. I didn't really feel that. Now, typically when people do things like Semax or they're researching the benefits of it, they'll pair it with another peptide called Selank. And Selank is supposed to taper down the increase in cortisol that someone gets on Semax. Part of my experiment that I wanted to conduct was to feel that cortisol, was to feel that stress so that I would know if I needed to manage it and how I would do so, what product would work to bring down that elevated cortisol. But I never felt it. I never got that extra stressor. And it's not something that they say you would feel during the day. You know, when you get that sometimes, when you get that wired but tired feeling and it's about 8 o'clock, you're like, oh man, I can't wait to go to bed. And then finally you get to bed and now you're just up. That's what they say happened to users on Semax. I didn't really get that experience. Mine was actually pretty mundane and relaxed. What I will say is on my Whoop, I did notice that my HRV was not as high as it used to be. I did notice a slight decrease, which in the realm of recovery is actually not a positive. But here's what I can say conclusively happened on my experience, right? Not anybody else's, just for me. My work output was marginally more effective. I was able to produce more. I was able to focus longer. I am not someone who's ever really used Adderall, Vyvanse, or any sort of nootropics or brain medication. So perhaps it was because I was so new to it. The only other thing I do actively use is NAD+, which I'm a huge, tremendous fan of, and I would recommend, to people who fit the mold, who might be able to benefit from that. And really the underlying thing I noticed the most was I was able to hold complex data sets in my head without any sort of buffer period or any ums or uhs in between any of my sentences. Everything kind of just flowed a little bit nicer. I've seen people pairing this with NAD+, and of course Selank, like I mentioned before. That seems to be one of the common stacks out in the marketplace. I did, 2 of the 3 myself. I did the NAD with the Semax. I also did the Semax by itself and the NAD by itself to see how they would stack independently and then what it would feel like together. And the findings were definitely that Semax seems to be a lot more mental focused in terms of the ability at which you're able to process information, where NAD seems to be a little bit more on the energy production side, just the willingness to process information, if you will. Other things participants could do to improve their cognitive function if they're looking to get the complete workaround of, how do I get the best output? There are other popular compounds on the market, like there's dihexa, of course, and then doing things like having a heavy fats diet, incorporating things like beef tallow, red meat, butter, things that have those saturated fat contents are extremely crucial for your cognitive function. But here's the deal. As a society, we are collectively getting less intelligent. Proven every single year. And there's a million different factors as to what it could be. I know what my views are. I definitely think without a doubt, it would be almost ignorant to imply that, you know, our 7-second attention spans are not from scrolling on Instagram and constantly being fed new feedback and new stimulation in such a short period of time. I do believe that there are environmental factors in what we're consuming on a day-to-day basis. I believe food, diet, and water are probably the largest contributing factors. The difficulty is it's nearly impossible to escape that. There's not much you can do because everything has that. So what we have to do now, and this is something I disagree with most of the biohacking community, is a lot of people are looking at, well, how do you remove these from your diet? And how do you remove these from your way of life? You know, what if I go live on a farm somewhere and then I don't have any more of these chemicals? For a good chunk of, you know, mental and metabolic and a lot of other diseases that people run into, yes, I believe removing the active negative ingredients is a huge success. But there are a lot of chemicals that we see that are called these forever chemicals that never leave the body, and they never will leave the body. So unless you are actively doing something to combat those forever chemicals, then you're going to have the negative effects of those chemicals in your system until the end of time. So what I strive to do on this page is give you guys the information on what's out there, what people are researching. Again, I never make recommendations on what you should do unless it is something that is clinically proven and of course legal to do, and that is not, you know, doesn't require any sort of prescription or anything like that. Anything in that regard, you have to go to a doctor, you have to seek medical attention. They are going to be the ones who are going to be able to guide you down that path. I do recommend seeing a specialist, however, of someone who strategically studies these areas of medicine, as opposed to your regular run-of-the-mill doctor who's probably not as educated. But if you found this video interesting at all, please share it with someone you think could benefit from it. Like, subscribe, turn on the post notifications. We're going to be doing these a lot. All right, guys, we'll see you.